Hello and welcome to the Many Hats Podcast, where we explore the fascinating journeys of entrepreneurs and leaders who have donned multiple hats in their respective fields. Join your host, Stuart Forsyth, along with special guests, as they delve into the stories and insights of individuals who possess a unique blend of talents and expertise, making them true multidisciplinarians. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
So welcome back to the Many Hats Podcast with me. My name's Stuart Forsyth, and today I'm glad to be joined by Jenny Hamill. Hello, Jenny.
Hello.
How are you? Good to have me. It is.
That's a good start. It's great to have you, Stuart. Great to have you here in your studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me on my own podcast.
You're welcome. Great.
How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. I'll be better in half an hour, but there we are.
Yeah, I know. So for folks that are listening in, we just had a conversation about 10 minutes ago, and Jenny didn't realise that we're on camera today.
I know.
So she's delighted.
I'm delighted, and I would have dressed quite differently. I've got my Christmas double chin, but just try and sit properly.
Oh, no, not at all. Many Hats Podcast is all about talking with lots of business leaders and organisation leaders in terms of what they do and the different roles that they play in their respective fields. So I'm keen to talk to you today about what you do. So for everybody who's listening, tell me, what do you do?
So my day job, I'm creative director of Scripture Union Scotland, which is a charity for children and young people. And I've also got 3 kids. So I know that your podcast is about the many hats that we might wear in our kind of professional life, but my many hats would be, a big part of it would be that. So
Mom life.
Yeah, that's it. So I've got a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Wow.
And a busy life at home, busy with my church, and just recently went full-time actually as creative director. So Those are all my current hats. So
creative director, let's talk about that first then. So that wasn't the original title of your job, was it?
No. So, well, I've been through a few different jobs in SU. The most recent one before this was head of digital. So I'd started off as a kind of schools worker. So I used to go around schools, work with volunteers in local areas. It was called a regional worker. And had done that for a couple of years, and then we went into lockdown and everything changed if you were working in schools, obviously, because they were shut down. And even when they were open again, they weren't keen on sort of having volunteers and visitors in. So at Scripture Union, we were looking at how we could still be serving schools and having input without actually being able to go in. And we started creating digital content for schools. So what we do is we speak, in terms of our schools works, we do lots of different things, but we speak into the RME and RO curriculum, health and wellbeing, that kind of thing. So we started creating these digital resources that could be used without us having to be there. And we had a brilliant response to that, teachers just grabbing them with both hands. And I think that really led us as an organisation to think, is there more we could be doing here? And we kind of got our core work, which is in person with young people. We have 3 centres. We're bringing young people there for holidays, for school residentials. But we were thinking, is there a way we could reach more children and young people on digital platforms? And so we kind of created a bit of a digital strategy and advertised for a head of digital. And I decided, just off the back of that experience, it was a bit of a crazy jump for me, but to apply for that, and was successful. And so that was a bit of a new chapter for me and a bit of a step into kind of leadership in terms of driving what was really quite a new area. And was quite quickly aware that actually what we needed to do was gather a team, a creative team. That was how we were going to achieve a kind of digital vision for our organisation. And to cut a long story short, we created that creative team, and I was appointed the creative director, still responsible for digital and digital development, but that just being sort of part of a wider piece of work and recognising the bigger team that we needed around about that. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am, and just really at the very start of that journey, to be honest.
Well, you say that, but you've achieved quite a considerable amount in a short space of time, in terms of putting a team together and the different strands of how you can do digital and reaching out with different people. We were talking earlier on about this role of gaming, you know, and like, I love the sound of that. See, if I wasn't doing this, I would have been right in for that.
Yeah.
100%. So you've obviously got all of that, but in terms of being like, so you're clearly big boss, you know, in terms of people answer to you sort of thing. And so did you have quite a considerable amount of input to that in terms of putting the team together?
We're not quite building it from scratch, but so we had a marketing and comms team within SU Scotland that were really looking after the marketing and comms of the day-to-day.
Yep.
But that was stretched as it was, and what we were saying is if we're then going to start creating content and we're looking into how we expand social media for young people, how we're creating short form content and long form content for online resources for groups, curriculum for schools, then yes, you will need a marketing comms team that are going to be able to promote that. And so we'll need to expand that team, but you're also going to need more creatives. And so it was just kind of looking at, well, how are we going to do that? And part of the challenge in that has been, I mean, it's a good thing to be wrestling with, is when you're working in the sort of creative sphere, where is the line between what should be freelance and what should be in-house?
Right.
And so the in-house team, yes, we've grown a little bit and we've got vacancies right now, but actually it's been, the key thing has been linking up with creative freelancers who can maybe work with us on a project basis. Because what you find in creative is that actually some of the best people, they want to be freelance because, first of all, they get more money that way. And secondly, you know, if they're really skilled in their field, then that gives them sort of variety and choice. And creatives are just a little bit floopy. So actually they don't like to be tied down to 9 to 5.
Yes.
So
100%.
Which I say as a creative myself, you know, like I do struggle with the formality of my role at times.
Yeah.
So it's just been trying to, yes, we're growing a team and we're getting there, but there's a long way to go. And it's just, I don't think we'll end up with a huge internal team. I think it'll be core internal team. And then how can we support that with really brilliant artistic creative freelancers around the edges of that?
Yeah. I love that. And I've experienced that with you guys as well.
Yeah.
Been drafted in to do some work, and I loved it. I loved the whole, like you're saying, creative freedom to come in and be a part of that and create content. And in my case, it was videography. But as a creative, I get what you're saying. Like you don't. That's why I love what I do, because there's no 2 days the same.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
I could be, you know, graphic design one day, videography the following day, and that's one of the things that I love about my job. So, but you as a creative director then, so do you find yourself dipping into different parts of the job in terms of content creation and marketing and so on and so forth? What's that like?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably a little bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. Is that the saying?
But still always better than a master of one. That's the proper saying. Did you know that?
Is it?
Yeah, a jack of all trades.
Uh-huh.
But is a master of none, but still always better than a master of one. I nearly swore there. Than a master of one. Yeah, that's the saying.
Okay, no, I didn't know that. But yeah, so I mean, I've done quite it's not different jobs really, because I think there's been common threads running through them. But I was an events manager for a short time. I was a children and families worker in a local church setting. I had my own wee kind of cottage crafts business for a wee while, and then I was the schools worker at SU. I was in a Ceilidh band as the singer and caller for 10 years. So I've done...
I didn't know that.
Did you not know that?
Did not know that.
Jiggered, Ceilidh band. We shout out for Jiggered.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I won, and two. Oh, I love it. I love a good Ceilidh.
So if you want a wee dash and white sergeant. So I've done lots of things where I've dipped into different elements of sort of kind of different creative streams. So I've been a musician. I've done videography through all my children and families work. I've done design for my small business. When I was in the early days of SU, I was doing design and some of the video stuff. I've done some writing, I've done speaking. So I've done all of these things in a kind of amateur level, and maybe kind of got away with doing it on a professional or level. But I've never honed in on any one of those things. But what I know is what I want out of people that are doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm a complete perfectionist. I'm a nightmare. And I couldn't make the video that I have in my head, but I know what I want that to look like. And I know that I need the right person with the right level of skill. And when you get it, and when you don't get it, you definitely know, because it's just not quite there. So
that's interesting, because I'm very similar to you,
Yeah.
so I'll dip my toe into many different things, but kind of differently from you is that I would tend to be like, I better just do it myself,
Yeah.
I'll do it myself because I'll probably do a better job, or I'll get it done quicker or something like that. So I find it incredibly difficult to kind of hand off stuff to other people.
Definitely.
But even though I know that there are people out there that are far better than I am, but I kind of think, I know what I want, like you're saying, I know what I want, and I can't be bothered with the to and fro of going back
That's right.
and saying, can you change this or can you tweak that? And so I find that part incredibly difficult to hand off. So, but you've now got a team running about you. So how
That's right.
how do you are you able to put that part of yourself aside and then just easily just say, right, the team are going to do this, and whatever happens, come what may, or like?
It's both and. I mean, you have to be able to take a step back and say, okay, the vision we have here, it's too big for me to do by myself.
Okay.
And also it's not only my vision to own. So you take a step back, you look at something like what we're doing at Scripture Union. We've got a vision to reach every child and young person in Scotland. So when we take that into the kind of digital sphere, like, I can't do that by myself, and so I could reduce the vision and say, right, well, if I was to work away at that myself, we might be able to reach a few hundred or a few thousand young people. I mean, there's a lot you can do on, sitting on your own TikTok channel these days. But actually, there has to be an element of letting go and trusting others. And like, I would very much believe in a kind of servant leadership model of leadership, where actually you get the right people around you, the right foundation, and then you're looking to serve them and help them to develop into what the role is requiring. And it's balancing that with strong drive alongside. So you're driving the vision and you're bringing on the people that are going to, help to deliver that. I say bringing them on. I mean, most of them are far more qualified than I am. But there is an element, particularly with us being a youth organisation, where we're bringing in specialists, but we're also bringing in people that are maybe a bit earlier in their career, or volunteers often. Like, we're often working with volunteers. We were talking earlier about a podcast that we're looking to set up at SU, and that's going to be with young people, because there's no point in a youth organisation making a podcast with people my age.
All us oldies.
Yep, exactly. So, I mean, it's people my kids' age that were wanting on that. And so, when you do that, you have to have patience. You have to be expecting that there'll be a little bit of development to do.
Yeah.
But that is part of being a leader. Nobody wants a leader that's doing everything themselves. It's somebody that's going to support them whilst driving that vision, somebody that you can follow and is going to be the person that's going to get the thing over the line,
Love that. Yeah, that's a really good point. How do you, so having a team round about you, having volunteers round about you, having many hats to wear in terms of all the aspects of digital that you need to cover, how do you then kind of prioritise? What's your go-to in terms of prioritising key tasks and getting things done? What does that look like for you?
I have no good answer to this. It's really good. So, I mean, I'm a visual thinker, so I love my visual notes and my to-do lists and things.
Yep.
I think that's really important. But I'm also chaotic, so I'll maintain them for a bit, and then they'll fall apart a little bit. So it's the struggle of a creative, that you find a system and it works and you still don't stick to it.
Right.
So I think, just trying to recognise who you are, and that yes, I'm always going to be a bit chaotic, but not just entirely letting yourself off with that either. You know, there does need to be a little bit of discipline, and I'm going to struggle with the sort of formal work set, and sometimes I'm going to struggle with consistently having a diary that always looks the same and has consistent to-do lists, but actually recognising the benefit that comes from that and working hard at those things. And not just giving in to the chaos. So I think that's one thing. And then, you know, there's just wee techniques that I've been learning as I go, and they're a bit cliche, but like, for example, have you heard of Eat the Frog?
No.
Oh, that's a good one. So I've no idea where it came from, but it's the idea that you take the thing that you're putting off, or, you know, you've got maybe a wee list of things that are just a wee bit difficult and you're always inclined to push them. So whether it's a difficult email you've got to write, or you've got to write a proposal for something, or you've got to map something out and you're just not quite sure how you're going to get there. And what you do is you diary that in for first thing on a day of the week. So maybe a Thursday morning, you're like, I'm going to eat the frog at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning. And you don't look at your email, you don't look at whatever other software you've got on the go, and you say, I am finishing that thing between 9 and 10 or 9 and 11 or 9 and 12. And it's diaried in, it doesn't get moved just because somebody else wants to see or whatever, and you eat the frog. But I learned that at a training course. I'd learned it several times and I kept forgetting it. Have you heard you've had younger kids? Do you know that song? Do you know the went the little green frog?
Oh yeah.
Right. So you just change the words and you go, eat the little green frog, and it helps you remember. So there's a million of these things, aren't there? But I think for somebody like me, you have to actually grab onto some of those and be very intentional about them, because it's tough.
Procrastination is real.
Oh, procrastination. Revenge procrastination. Have you heard that one?
I heard of that.
So that's the thing we do where we've had a busy day. People have been needing our time. So, you know, I've been at work. You've come home. You're trying to get something on the table. You know, kids have got things they want to talk to you about. My daughter right now, all she wants to talk to me about is how she's going to get to the Jonas Brothers concert.
All right.
So multiple different people she could go with, all that. My son, he's wanting to go on a 6-year holiday, and that's they must have looked at 25 holidays. That's an underestimate. So there's always something. My 8-year-old's got a sore finger, whatever it is. And your whole night disappears. And revenge procrastination is when you get to 11 o'clock at night and you should go to your bed, and that would be the sensible thing to do. But instead you scroll or you watch a box set, and it's like your revenge. And it's like, I am going to have this time to myself and I'm going to do something mindless even though I should be asleep right now.
Well, all right, okay. Well, yeah, I get that because I do that every single night.
Yes, that's what it's called. There's a name for it.
All right, okay. I'll now that I know what it is.
Yes.
Because every single night I'm the same. I've got 2 kids, and 11 and 8. So you can imagine that the chaos is, you know, it's just as much at, you know, after dinner time, and they've got their clubs and all that kind of stuff. So, but what I also do as well is, because I've procrastinated so much throughout the day. So yeah, I might just at night I'll maybe just intentionally have that time, but I also find myself catching up on tasks that I just never done. Yeah, like during the day, which I really should have got done, and I've done that revenge procrastination during the day actually, and I've sat on the couch and I've went through TikTok or Instagram for the best part of 45 minutes to an hour and go, what the heck have I just watched or listened to? And it's just a ridiculous amount of time, and I find it quite hard, you know, because there's so much content online and it's so easy. Like, we've got a resource literally at our fingertips, but then it can be so distracting as well. It's a thing that can be really powerful to have, you know, in terms of, so the question I was asking about prioritising tasks. So I have everything on my phone, my iPad, and it helps me keep track of, right, what am I doing today and what's happening tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. But in the same device, I've got Instagram, I've got TikTok, I've got Facebook, and they're just constantly eating up my attention. And I find that incredibly difficult sometimes to stay on focus.
Yeah, I mean, we're carrying the universe in our pocket, aren't we?
Yeah.
And certainly for me, working with young people, I feel that burden for them. Because it's one thing for us to cope with that as adults, particularly as adults, you know, kind of millennials, who we've been quite fortunate because we've kind of what is it, you know, like we didn't have it when we were really young,
We've
but
had
we
the best of
learned
both
it.
worlds, haven't we?
Yeah, we've had the best of both. We've lived without it, but we
Yeah.
got it early enough that it's been quite
Yeah.
instinctive for us.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine what it would be like to just be born into that now, you know, and to have to figure out how you manage that. I don't even know if they think about figuring out how to manage it. It's just there in their face all the time. So yeah, it's a huge challenge for us, but I have that on me all the time I do feel a kind of sense of responsibility of having my own kids and then in a youth organisation about how we're kind of stewarding that for the next generation as well. It's really difficult.
And managing others as well, because I'm sure,
totally.
you know, your staff as well is, you know, try to encourage them to stay on point and what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's talk a wee bit about kind of leadership principles. SU is quite openly a Christian organisation, so I love that. I'm a Christian myself, so I love everything that SU does and what it stands for. What would you say are some of your own personal leadership principles that you believe are crucial, not only for the success of the organisation that you're working in, but your own personal success and how you, like, so the stuff we've just been discussing, like to overcome stuff like that, what would you say are the sort of key principles in leadership that you need to have?
Well, I mentioned servant leadership, and really that is modelling, you know, what we see Jesus did, because he very much came to serve, lowered himself as kind of king of the universe and came down to serve us. So, I very much would say, if I've been put in the privileged position of getting to lead people, even in a really small scale like what I do in SU, then it's important that I do that with that mindset. So, you know, you're doing that with humility. You're doing that with kindness, and you're seeking not only to treat someone the way that you want to be treated, but to treat them better than you would treat yourself. So that's quite countercultural. I wouldn't see leadership within SU Scotland as being a hierarchical thing. Hierarchical, that's the word, isn't it?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's not about ambition. It's not about rising up, about having more power. It's not that. It's actually, you know, as you're kind of potentially taking on more responsibility, you're humbling yourself in that, because there, you know, that's a responsibility to do that well. So that's one thing in terms of a principle of leadership. On a more kind of management style of things, I'm really working hard at the coaching style of management. So there's a difference between, as we know, leadership and management. I'm better at the leadership than the management. I struggle with the management a bit, because that's the kind of, the leadership is the vision setting and the driving and this is what we're doing and this is how we're shaping things. I can do that. The management side of things is the day-to-day, keeping up with people. It's doing your one-to-ones and all these kind of things, development reviews. And I find that quite a lot when in my job as creative director, because it's quite new. I really want just to be on that kind of driving side of things. I want us to be trying new things. I want to be building stuff. So the management side of things, it can be a distraction, and yet it's really key, because obviously you're wanting to make sure that people are supported and they're getting to develop in such a way that it serves that bigger vision. So coaching management, style of management, that's about when someone comes to you with a problem, you don't just give them the answer and say, right, we'll go and do that. What you're doing is you're trying to develop them for the next time they have a problem. So they come to you and it's more about asking questions, you know. It's like the I grow model, which I can't recall right now, but it's basically looking at the situation that they have and saying, like, well, have you thought of this? And, you know, what do you have that could help you? And what could a next step be? So coaching management is more about helping them to get to the solution by themselves, rather than just saying, well, go and ask him or go and do that, or I'm telling you what to do here. Yeah. And that serves you in the long term, because what you're doing is you're developing that skill in somebody else. So I think that's important. And then the last thing I would say is just that bigger perspective. You know, you're talking about Christian faith, and I can't imagine leading without having that, because, you know, like, this is all part of something God's already put in place, and he's already, you know, he sees the steps ahead of me. And like before Christmas, I had this kind of month where honestly I was going backwards, because, you know, I've been talking for a year about building this creative team, and I'd put out adverts for jobs and I'd appointed, and then the people had actually said, no, actually I don't want the job. And then, so I thought I was getting a new manager, and then I wasn't. And then the next week somebody left from the team.
Right.
And I was like, man, this is tough. I'm going backwards. I'm trying to build this thing, and actually not only am I not getting there, but I'm beginning to. And, you know, that would be quite difficult if I didn't have sort of the perspective that, okay, yeah, this is my vision, but actually it's bigger than that. Like, I believe this is God's vision. And, you know, I was really reminded about these kind of divine setbacks that you have. And if you look in the Bible, most people, even if you're not a Christian, you may well have heard the story of Moses and, Joseph. So that's Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat and all that. So he's basically, his brothers don't like him and he gets chucked down a well. And then he ends up a slave, and then it just gets worse and worse. And then he ends up in prison. But then he ends up like basically leading a nation. And it's all these things that, I mean, they're not only setbacks, they're utter disasters. But we see, like, there's lots of stories in the Bible like that of like people, these setbacks that almost had to happen in order for you to go forwards. And it's not quite such a disaster as being put in prison or getting chucked down a well, but
The principle's the same.
the principle's the same. And
Yeah.
I had a kind of light bulb moment before Christmas where I thought, yeah, okay, yeah, I have gone backwards a little bit, but I do see with that kind of godly perspective that this might just be something that needs to happen right now in order to go forward and maybe get, you know, new people, the right people to grow this team for what it needs to be. So it's not a leadership principle exactly, but it is just an aspect of perspective, I think.
Yeah, I like that. That style of leadership, that coaching and mentorship and apprenticeship, what about when it doesn't work? What about the times when somebody just doesn't get that way of leadership at all? What do you do?
You try again.
And tell them it's this way or no way.
I think you do need to be persistent, and it might take a few rounds of that for someone to get it. But yes, I've also sat in a kind of one-to-one setting where you do just need to go into the advice side of things. It's like, you know, there's a slight parallel with counselling. You know, in counselling, there's an element of somebody comes to you for advice, but the listening side of it is much more important. And a trick of counselling is trying to hold your tongue, basically, and not just automatically offer advice. Like, I always want to do that. You know, if I'm chatting to somebody and they've got an issue, it's like you just want to say, well, what about this? But, you know, often somebody just wants to be listened to. And similarly, in kind of coaching management, there's that trick of like, yes, I'm trying to coach you through this and get you there by yourself. But sometimes somebody just needs that wee bit of help. And actually, especially if they're younger or they're newer in their career, you do need to just model things a wee bit. So you'd say, well, you know, actually, when that had happened to me, what I did was, or in this case, actually, maybe you just want to chat to such and such and they could help you with that. So you're not abandoning the principles of coaching, because sometimes somebody does just need that extra wee bit of help, I think. But I think even in that, you know, if you do need to just give people that wee bit more help to get to the solution, then the next time hopefully they don't need quite so much. But yeah, I mean, you're always going to get people like that, I guess, that just don't get it. That's a whole other podcast, maybe.
Well, maybe that's a good episode to maybe line up at some point. I've in my line of work, I just employ freelancers.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't have that same relationship that you would probably have with staff.
That's important.
But I love that concept of, you know, of coaching them through and letting them find answers for themselves. And I think that's a great way, because I think that style of leadership, you know, it's days gone by now where it was, you know, pointing the finger and saying you must do this, you must do that, you know, because you're not getting the best out of your workforce that way, are you? In terms of dictating of, and some there are some fields where that probably is necessary in some respects, but surely you must get more out of your staff when you're in a happy environment and you're coached through things that help you become better.
Yeah.
And a better version of yourself.
Yeah. As I say, it goes back to that thing of it's that getting that balance between supporting them and leading, so people need to feel supported. They need to feel seen. They need to feel heard. They need to feel that you're for them. Like, and you know the difference yourself. I've had managers before and they're for you. They want your best. And others that maybe just, they're not unkind, but they don't have time for you, or
just focused on the result.
That's right. So we all know ourselves what it is where we would want for ourselves, and so you want to be that kind of leader. So you want people to feel supported, and that you have a, even just down to formality of like, yeah, okay, we're going to have a development plan for you, so that you're not just standing still. You're actually, how are you growing in this role? But yeah, then balancing that with being the leader who says, well, this is the direction we're going in, and, making that clear and exciting them with that as well. Like, people want to feel like they're doing something important.
And a part of it.
They want to feel part of that, like they're important to that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our clients, and they're quite a big name, it was just really interesting. Like, so the team that I've got as well, even just a small part that they've played in, and being able to say, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's massive. It might only be, they designed a poster for that particular event or something, but it's huge, and they're taking ownership of that as well, which means you're excited for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Yeah. Where have you failed? where has there been times where you've failed, but you've been like, big lesson learned? I'm going to fast forward this podcast here for a good 5 minutes. And
no, you should have given me a chance to think. It's not that I can't think of anything. I'm just thinking what's appropriate to share.
Maybe another way of wording that is a wee bit of insight to some of the challenges that you've faced.
Yeah. It's not new. It's just that challenge of balancing. And if I can just go to the mum thing for a minute, that actually, I think that would be a huge challenge for me in terms of how I balance that, but also it would be somewhere where I failed a bit before. But actually, you often hear women saying that you feel like you have to work, like you're not a mum, and you have to be a mum like you don't work. So it's maybe not, we're talking about this podcast being about the many hats you wear at work. That is a reality for me. And actually there is a challenge there of feeling like you're doing your job with integrity, and you're still like kind of fully present for your family and you're prioritising them. And I definitely feel like I don't always do that very well. But I'm not sure that it's possible to do that perfectly, to be honest, because we're just not perfect, and it's just about striving and giving yourself a break. That's not really what you asked me though, but that's the thing that's on my mind all the time actually, is just trying to maintain that.
So with that being said, just as we kind of finish up then, what would your advice be, to people who are kind of setting up and setting out in a business role or a leadership role, where the reality is that you need to wear many hats, you need to perform many roles, probably to, a good standard.
Yep.
What would your advice be then to somebody who's kind of starting out in that role?
Okay, I'm going to give you 3 things off the very top of my head. So the first one would be have a strong vision for what you're doing that other people will be able to get behind. So you need to be passionate about what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, who's it for. You need to be just ready to run after that, so that when you're explaining that to people, they will get excited about that too. So a strong vision. Good team of people around you, whatever that looks like in your context. That could be a work team, that could be a team of freelancers, that could be a family, that could be volunteers, but you're not going to be able to do it on your own, and you need to make sure that you've got a good team of both skilled and passionate people around you with integrity that will help you carry off that vision. And the third thing I think I'd probably say is don't take yourself too seriously. It's sometimes my boss says I don't take myself seriously enough. I need to be more professional, but I think it's important that you can laugh at yourself, and you can have a laugh while you're doing the vision, even if it's really important to you and it's like, you know, it's your kind of life's work. You need to be able just to have a laugh and laugh at your mistakes, and so I do think that's important. Yeah, I
love it. So be passionate, get a good team run about you, and don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah,
it's good advice.
Is it?
Yeah,
that was good, because I just
particularly that last one. See the don't take yourself too seriously, because I got pretty serious about setting up my business, and then there's that old saying, you know, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But what the reality is that if you enjoy what you do, you work harder than you'll ever work.
Totally.
You know, because you enjoy it. But then it's that part of don't take yourself too seriously as well. Like, enjoy it. Enjoy where you're at and what you're doing. And because if you don't enjoy it, you're just going to hate it, aren't you? You're just going to despise what you do and not look forward to it at all. So I like it.
That's right.
Great.
Yep.
Jenny, thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate you coming.
I feel like I was able to be quite serious for that most of the time anyway.
Good.
Yeah.
Aye.
Good.
We've not finished yet, but
oh, right, okay. Right, so I have to hold it together a wee bit longer.
Yeah, no, it's great. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate if you would hit the subscribe button. It helps to keep this podcast going and to create more and more content and talk to lots of other people who are running businesses or leading organisations and doing what they're doing, and just getting really good insight to what it means to run a business and to lead an organisation. So hit the subscribe button, whatever platform you're watching this on, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Many Hats Podcast. Remember to hit subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. For any questions or topic ideas, you can reach Stuart on Instagram at many_hats_podcast. We'll see you next time.